welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Trump says the US might launch a second military strike on Venezuela if the government doesn't cooperate. The UN Security Council will meet after the US attacked Venezuela and removed President Nicolas Maduro, a move the UN Secretary General warned could set a dangerous precedent. After military action in Venezuela, US President Donald Trump says he needs Greenland for national security. His claims draw criticism from Denmark. US President Donald Trump has warned Iran for a strong response if security forces escalate violence against protesters. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung to meet China Xi Jinping today in Beijing, aiming to repair strained ties with Seoul's biggest trading partner. Ukraine military says one person killed so far in Russia's attack on Kyiv, says attack ongoing. New Zealand's health ministry is investigating a cybersecurity breach of a private website hosting medical records for about a third of the population. Venezuela's interim president Delcy Rodriguez creates a commission to seek the release of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. Alright viewers, let's start with the top focus. Now, US President Donald Trump said that he is not worried about Venezuela turning into another Iraq or Afghanistan. Trump stressed that the US focus is to manage Venezuela in a way that allows America to benefit from the country's economic resources, especially its oil. This comes after Maduro and his wife were captured in Caracas and brought to the US, where they will face drug trafficking charges in New York. Trump said the US will temporarily run Venezuela and get the oil flowing during the transition. Secretary of State Marco Rubio later clarified that the US does not plan to govern Venezuela directly, but will continue to enforce an oil quarantine to influence policy. Maduro's capture came after months of military preparation and strikes on drug-laden boats in the Caribbean. All right, joining me now in this discussion is retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi, who is a defense analyst, and he joins us from New Delhi. Well, thank you very much, General, for joining us in this discussion. I believe it's the first discussion that I'm having with you post Trump's actions in Venezuela. To start with, let's talk about Trump's plan of action from here on. He has Maduro now. He will be produced in court later tonight. But what about Venezuela? Venezuela's Supreme Court has asked for Rodriguez, the interim, the vice president, to take over as the acting president, but that's not what Trump would like to do. He wants to run the country on his own accord. My question to you is, how will he do that? How does he plan to run? Of course, no statement has come from the US as of now, but what's your assessment as to what his likely action is going to be?
Thanks, Kriti. Always a pleasure to be on the NewsX World. While with you, I am discussing this issue for the first time, but I have been on your channel for last 2 days and discussed the issue in various dimensions. Well, you have posed a very direct question. There are two elements or the two components of the question. One is that how, Maduro and his wife will be tried in US, that's a legal dimension. And second is how US plans to run Venezuela, that is the second question. Well, first and foremost, it's very difficult to run another country by a neighbor. That doesn't actually make much of sense. Well, if you interpret it, what US will try to do is to have a government in Venezuela which is favorable to it or which is well aligned to it, and then control the narrative through that government. And that's what President Trump has issued a very strict warning a very stern warning to current officiating President Delcy Rodriguez that either she supports the US government or he'll go for possibly a second strike to ensure that the dispensation in Venezuela toes the American line. So that's what America would try to do, to have a government or to have a dispensation which is aligned to its area of interest or which aligns to its policies. And the second point, what Marco Rubio said, that they will quarantine the flow of oil into Venezuela. They already have imposed blockade and all sanctions are in place. So therefore, they will ensure that the oil does not flow out, and oil flows where America wanted to flow, because after all, Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserve, something to the tune of 300 billion barrels,
Yeah.
and it is only exploiting about 1 million barrels a day. So there's a huge opportunity for America to exploit the resource. So therefore, in nutshell, Kriti, I feel that President Trump and American government will ensure that the person who is at the helm in Venezuela toes the American line and is aligned to American interest, and that's how they possibly would like to run Venezuela. Kriti.
Yeah. But how do you weigh in Trump's statement when he says that it will not become another Iraq or Afghanistan? Is it because of the oil reserves of the country or anything else that he might be referring to?
Well, Kriti, there's no parallel between Afghanistan, Iraq, and Venezuela. Well, of course, the only parallel is that in both the countries, Iraq and Afghanistan, the governments were changed or the regime changes were there. So also in Venezuela. But if we look at very closely, Trump's mindset or his way of thinking, which he has articulated in the latest national security strategy of America, where it has been categorically mentioned or categorically stated that for America, the Western Hemisphere is very important, and they would like to ensure that per se. Kriti.
Okay, all right. Thanks for your comment, General Dwivedi. Do continue to stay on with me as we tell our viewers now what Japan is saying. Now, Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi declined to comment directly on the US operation in Venezuela that captured President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. She said Japan's priority is the safety of its citizens living in Venezuela. Takaichi added that Tokyo is working closely with relevant countries to monitor the situation. She stressed the importance of restoring democracy and stabilizing Venezuela and said Japan will coordinate with the international community and G7 nations towards that goal. However, she did not address the US raid or Maduro's removal from power. Let's listen in to her statement.
でまたベネズエラでの事案を受けまして、日本政府としては、私の指示のもと、まずは法人の安全確保、これを最優先としつつ、関係国と緊密に連携して対応に当たっております。で、ベネズエラ情勢につきましては、日本政府としまして、これまでも一刻も早くベネズエラにおける民主主義が回復されることの重要性を訴えて、
All right, let's invite General Dwivedi to join us back into the discussion here. Okay, General Dwivedi, how much of this do you think has to do with the question of Taiwan? We know that Takaichi had issued very aggressive remarks and could benefit from US support as far as Taiwan and the East China Sea area is concerned.
Well, Kriti, the reactions of the global polity are as per their geopolitical alignments. So therefore, the American allies and partners, they have been very muted or politically very correct when they have commented on America's aggression against Venezuela. And on the other side, those countries who are adversaries of America, be it China, Russia, Iran, they have come out very openly and condemned this act of America use of force. And of course, other countries which are very close in proximity, Latin American countries like Cuba or Brazil, or even in South Africa, who are the components of BRICS, they have also come out very openly criticized this action. But when you come to Japan, Japan is a ally of America. It's a very important security partner. It's a very important component of the Quad, and they have a very defense agreements. And please remember, 40,000 American troops are based in Japan, and they have number of bases. So there is no way, Prime Minister Takaichi will come out openly to condemn this act, and their reactions have been very muted, and they only express concern. Even if you say India also, our reaction has been very, very muted. So the point is that countries react as per their geopolitical alignment, the countries react as per their national interest, and Japan is no exception. As I said, Japan, South Korea, they are all part of the Far East alliances, and I don't think more than this would be expected from Japan. And this is what the diplomacy is all about. That where your interest lies, where you are well aligned, well, you only respond according to your own national interest and your own geopolitical alignment. So therefore, it's quite expected the Japanese reaction would have been what it is, nothing more or nothing less, Kriti.
All right, thanks then very much, General Dwivedi, for joining me in this discussion. It was a pleasure to speak with you. And with that, viewers, let's move ahead. Now, Greenland's Prime Minister, Hans Fredrik Nielsen, has responded to Donald Trump's repeated threats to annex Greenland, saying that's enough now. Nielsen made it clear that Greenland will not be for sale and called for an end to the pressure and insinuations of annexation. He stated that while Greenland remains open to dialogue, it must be done through proper channels and with full respect for international law. Nielsen defined Greenland as a democratic, self-governing territory under Danish sovereignty and rejected Trump's comments as disrespectful. The Danish government, along with Greenland, has sharply criticized the US threat, asserting that the island's future will not be shaped by such pressure. Trump had previously claimed that the US needed Greenland for defense and economic reasons. Now, joining me now is Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, who's Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst, and he joins us from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Collins, for joining me in this discussion. Do you think that Greenland will get the support that it now requires from the European Union? Because many of the European Union leaders, especially from the Western Europe, we're talking about France, Germany, Italy, have not entirely condemned, Trump's actions in Venezuela. They've only said that they hope for a smooth transition to a democratic regime. But Greenland will be of a greater concern to the European Union. What do you think we should expect from the European Union leaders as far as support to Denmark and Greenland is concerned?
Yes, thank you, Kriti. We have seen how, the European nations, they need the support of the US, especially for Ukraine. And hence we have seen this subdued response, with regards to Greenland. And Greenland is critically important for the US in terms of, maintaining the primacy, the power gap, the power dominance on the Western Hemisphere for the United States. On the northern side, we have seen how Venezuela is also at the center of the equation. The recent moves of Venezuela has also strengthened the immediate priorities under the Trump administration, that is to ensure that the Western Hemisphere is free from any increasing power presence or influence, especially by Beijing and Moscow, and that there's this real compelling need for Washington to maintain the utmost dominance of the US in this part of the world. So of course we have seen how Greenland has always been the bigger part of the equation for Trump, and that of course geopolitically, economically, in terms of also being at the front line of resisting any potential missile attacks from Russia. So this has all been sealed. But of course now the equation, the dilemma remains that how to get the entire control or autonomy over Greenland. And I will foresee that of course Denmark has been adamant in maintaining its sovereignty over Greenland, but I foresee that you will see greater difficulties in the months and years ahead to get the total full support from Denmark's neighbors and from other European nations, simply because of the fact that the US still remains as the central economic and defense support partner for Europe, especially also with regards to the issue of Ukraine. So I don't see this as being looming large over the central, frontline dilemma or priority for other European nations, because they have been now fixated by the need for US support over Ukraine, and of course they have been now under tremendous pressure to deter any potential Russian threat from the eastern flank. So I don't see this as being of utmost priority for other European nations for now.
All right, thanks Collins for your comment there, but to continue to stay on with us as we move ahead now, viewers, let's also tell you that Chinese oil stocks have fallen amid concerns that the US ouster of Venezuelan President Maduro could limit China's access to oil. The Venezuelan crude oil makes up about 5 to 8% of China's total imports, as China has refineries that can handle the thick type of crude Venezuela produces, making it attractive for fuel makers. However, Hong Kong has listed shares of CNOOC and PetroChina, which are two of China's biggest players in oil production, were down about 4% and 5%. Meanwhile, oil prices drifted lower as adequate global supplies offset concerns about supply disruptions. The Brent crude futures fell 21 cents or 0.4% to $60.54 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude was 28 cents or 0.5% lower at $57.04 a barrel. All right, I request Collins to join me back here with his comment. Collins, for how long should China be worried? Because it's only about 5%, 5 to 10% of oil that goes from Venezuela to China.
Well, we have seen how Trump has been strategic, has been brilliant in his efforts in a two-pronged impact based on what we have seen now. Upended years or even decades of Chinese reliance on Venezuela to bypass US sanctions, to bypass other Western sanctions, being used as one of the fallback options for China for potential future geopolitical movements, including a potential invasion of Taiwan. So we have seen how Venezuela has been a major debtor nation to Beijing, of course being a key BRI partner for China. So Beijing has now lost this part of the equation, and the US has asserted its dominance, its control over the access to oil. Of course, we have not seen the extent of a full control of that. There's this new future priority on maintaining stability, and of course the influx now of US oil companies, and this will have prolonged major long-term implications for China, and implicating and limiting its ability, its capacity for any major move on Taiwan. And we have seen how now we have, although President Trump has assured continuous oil access to Beijing based on his positive ties with President Xi, still we have seen how this will have major implications on Beijing's own fallback options. Although we have seen now it's only it constitutes only less than 10%, still the message being sent now is that there's no longer any way for Moscow or Beijing to have this kind of proxies in Latin America, not in Venezuela, and in terms of having this almost unchecked energy dominance or energy reliance to fuel these activities or actions that will undermine or threaten the interests of the US, especially also that will undermine the interest and security
of the US allies in Forex, Collins, because we know that Venezuela had started selling oil in yuan and not the dollar after 2018. And that was indeed what had troubled the United States the most because of the petrodollar that, the word that had come up. So how is the Forex going to be affected?
Well, we have seen the de-dollarization movement, as well as these increased efforts by China to bypass sanctions, by Iran also, the intent, the efforts to strengthen these alternative options, including to have this kind of a new pool of synergy among nations from Global South, from BRICS, to bypass the traditional dollar-dominated system. You have
Yes.
yet to see the efficacy of that. I don't see that to have such a real impact on this this area. We have seen also under President Trump, the U.S. is regaining its own energy dominance and energy independence, and now we have these new fallback options for the U.S. in terms of the access to the oil industry, and to have this more of a balanced playing field for the oil industry in Venezuela, and to bring in these oil giants from the U.S. This will mean a whole new chapter of positivity, and to restrict this illegal access, the transfer of energy sources, including oil, to China. We have seen we have put a stop to that, and this will in fact increase the positive outcome for the U.S. to control China, and to have this kind of positive ripple effect from this move alone. So this will effectively limit the ability, the capacity for China to again rely on these illicit resources, and that this will also constrain its ability to finance activities that might harm the interests of the U.S. and also the allies in East Asia especially.
Okay. Thanks very much, Collins, for joining me in this discussion and helping us with your perspective there. And with that, viewers, we're now going to proceed. Let's also tell you that Chinese AI startup Max is set to price its Hong Kong initial public offering IPO at the top of its range. According to reports, the IPO is expected to raise around $538 million, valuing the company at roughly $6.5 billion. Meanwhile, the offering has been oversubscribed multiple times, showing strong appetite for Chinese artificial intelligence firms. Max, founded in 2022 by former SenseTime executive Yan Junji, develops multimodal AI models that processes texts, audios, images, videos and music. However, the pricing is scheduled for January 6, with trading expected to begin on January 9, as several Chinese tech companies prepare to list in Hong Kong this week. Alright, that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.